Thumper, the shredding hippie. It's been a long time since I've been on YouTube here talking about surfboards, and there's been a good reason for that. I had a really rough year where I had a death of somebody very close to me, which was very challenging. And I also had an inguinal hernia, so I had to have an operation. And then I tore my quad, and so I was, out of the water for a long period of time. When I got back in the water, and I tried surfing what I thought were my bigger boards, man, like a 7.2, I couldn't do it. I mean, I didn't know what the hell happened. But anyway, at my age, I do need that extra volume and paddle power. So I've been spending a good 6 months at least. I mean, you should see all the surfboards I got in here. I've been experimenting with all different kinds of boards, man. So I'm here to tell you about what has worked for me. So as you know, the shredding hippie grew up in the 70s. I first started surfing in 1973. And I've been riding single fins, and I went through the whole 80s and 90s and all that. So I'm a shortboarder at heart. When I started learning surfing, longboards were passé. Nobody rode longboards. However, because the shortboard single fin boards that we were riding were still coming off of that longboard stuff, I came to find out, especially now, that I have a lot of longboard instincts that are built into my surfing that I did even in the 90s with the potato chips. I'd come in and I'd crank a bottom turn, and then I'd hop up a little bit. With those noses, you can't handle it. So I ended up purling. I still have those instincts. Those don't go away. I have to really concentrate if I'm just going to stay on the tail of the board and go from there. Otherwise, if I just let my instincts go, I'm going to hop up. And so bottom line is that the normal fun boards that I were riding, and the normal surfboards I were making for myself, they just don't work for me anymore. I have come to the realization that wave count is a hell of a lot more fun than sitting there watching the longboarders and the paddle boarders catching all the waves, and me scratching for something at 200 pounds and trying to surf a 6'4" surfboard. I mean, there's only so much volume you can pack into a 6'4" surfboard, man. So anyway, you can see by the boards behind me, I'm now moving into some bigger surfboards. So let me just cut to the chase and tell you the one that I don't care what level you're at, you have to try this surfboard. You have to surf this thing. That is this surfboard right here, man. This is the Stewart 949. So you see here it's got the 949. Now, this one is 8 feet, and I know that sounds huge, but this is my shortboard. And I have shorter ones here. I have a 7 foot. It's got a lot of volume on it, and I like it a lot. But this is 8 foot. It's 22.5 by 2 7/8 inches thick, and it's made of EPS. And so it's not your typical poly board. It's really light. It's actually really flexible. If I were to put it on the ground here, and I could just squish it with my foot. It's really flexible. Super light. But this is not your typical. I mean, you can look at the outline here. It is not your typical shortboard outline at all. It looks like a fun board or a longboard. I mean, at 8 foot for me, this would qualify as a longboard. And just to give you some example or some comparison. See, this surfboard here is a typical 8 foot longboard. And even though this one is actually 8'2", it's 2 inches longer than this one, they surf completely differently. This one feels like a longboard. This one feels like I'm riding a 6'10". And I surf it like that. In fact, I think the second time that I went surfing with it, I took it out, and it did everything for me. I took off on a set wave, and I came in and I rode it a little bit, and then it mushed out. And so because it was so big, I just let it just take me in on the whitewash, and it started to reform again. So I turned in, and I got kind of slotted in there, and then I pumped up and down the wave, and as the wave was closing out, I went almost completely vertical, and I felt like I got a little bit of air, and I came back down, and there were two people sitting on the beach. I don't know them. They stood up and started clapping like I was Kelly Slater or something. I felt like, oh my, man, I'm back. Anyway, so here's what's going on with this board that makes it so unique. First, I don't know if you can see it here, but first, if you can take a look at the rails here. We've got this like a shaved off rail. I forget what they call it. It's a beveled rail. Really sharp, goes all the way around. It's sharp all the way up at the nose, coming all the way down here. It's got a really serious single concave, which goes all the way through till right about here, and then you get from here, look at how far away I am from the fins. From here you start getting this V. By the time I get here, the V is so sharp it's almost cutting me. I have never felt a V as thick as this one. Maybe you can see, I don't know, I don't want to trip on my leash here, but maybe you can see what's happening with that bottom of that board. It's just crazy. Now you're also taking a look at the fins here. So we've got this really weird 5-fin setup, and this is a Scimitar. What are these? The Future's Scimitar quad 5-fin setup, and they recommend that you do it that way, so I did it that way. And I mean, it's amazingly loose and amazingly, I mean, it just drives like crazy. Anyway, this is my shortboard now. So I firmly recommend that you get one of those. I don't care what your surfing ability is. They come in a bunch of different sizes. And one of these days I'm going to get them to make me a custom with just a lot more foam at a shorter, you know, actually get it maybe at a 7 foot. But at 8 foot, that thing doesn't feel like a longboard at all until I need it. When I need to just get on the nose and go through the flat section, then it does exactly what I need. And as soon as I step back on the tail, and because the V is so crazy in the middle of the board, you can stand in the middle of the board and still pump that thing. It's just I wish I had known about that board, you know, 5 years ago when I first started it. So that's the Stewart 949. I highly recommend getting that. I also have an 8.6, a poly 8.6 with a gloss coat. That's 23 by 3. I took that out. The first time I took that one out, it paddled like a longboard, it caught waves like a longboard, and I stood up, and then it's the same kind of thing. From the middle of the board, you know, I'm riding the wave and just really slow, and it picks up, and all of a sudden, wham, I'm doing, you know, I'm pumping it down the line like it's a freaking shortboard. Now, of course, at 8.6 with all that volume, I mean, there is some swing weight, and I couldn't go completely vertical on those waves, but just tiny little waves was so much fun. So anyway, I highly recommend that board, the 949 by Stewart. So I'm going to talk about some more boards in a second, so hang on.